morning, or evening, depending on where you're at. Welcome to the Data Platform virtual group. And then all my slides click through. You can find us on our website at dataplatformwit.com. You can connect with us on what we still call Twitter because I don't like the other name at data_wit, and on Blue Sky at data-wit. We couldn't get them consistent because of the naming conventions, but we would love to hear from you if you would like to connect with us and share ideas with us and tell us what we are doing and subscribe to our newsletter and things like that, because we do a monthly newsletter to try to communicate with the community. We do send it out via Meetup, so you're probably already getting a link to it. Today's session is Uncovering the Secrets of the Dashboard Design by Juliana Smith. She has requested that we save questions to the end, so we will take those at the end and do discussions on things like that at the end. Next month's session hasn't been finalized, but we do have Chrissy Lemire committed to doing something for us. So we will announce that on Meetup once we get the details on that. So with that, I will turn it on Juliana to present our presentation.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much. Let me just put my session to presentation mode. There we go. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Great. So thanks a lot, everybody, for joining today, the session uncovering the secrets of dashboard design. I think most of you don't know me. My name is Juliana Smith. I'm actually based in the UK. My background is in physical oceanography. So I started my career in data science and ocean research. And since 2020, I have specialized in Power BI and user interface design. And for the past 2 years, I have also deep dive into digital accessibility. I currently work with project controls analytics, and I have a blog and a YouTube channel where I share content on Power BI as well as accessible design. So today we're going to unlock the secrets behind powerful dashboard design, how we can guide our users to insights before they even realize you're looking for them. So our goal today is to go beyond visuals that just look good. We want dashboards that feel intuitive and drive decisions. So we're going to talk about 3 main topics, which is design dashboards with purpose, hack human perception, and enhance interactivity and accessibility. Let's get started. Whenever we sit down and we start thinking about report development, or as many call dashboard, there are loads of things that come into our mind. We have to think about using Power Query. So how are we going to connect to the data? Do we need to, I don't know, adapt an API? Do we need to clean the data? How are we going to use Power Query effectively? And then nonetheless, we still have to think about a data model. So we have to ensure you're going to use Snowflake, we're going to use style schema, what are you going to do? How is the data model, is it scalable? Is it going to be enough for these report? And then we also think about DAX. That can be, I love DAX and I hate DAX, right? So DAX, it helps a lot, but can cause a lot of headaches. So we have to make sure that we learn about filter context, role context, and how to use the infamous calculate. We also have to think about performance optimization, right? How are the visuals rendering? Is it taking too long for a user? So every time they apply a filter, how long is it going to take to the visuals to load? Also on the back end, how is it going in terms of refresh? How long is it taking? You don't want to be like me. I was working with a client and they pulled my ear because my report was taking 30 minutes to refresh and I was taking a lot of their capacity. And then, of course, we have data quality and assurance. We have to make sure that the data is coming through is the way that we need. There are no typos, there are nothing that may cause errors, and the DAX, our calculations are returning the correct values. And sometimes, even when we ace everything, we go through everything, you know, you think, oh, wow, I did a good job. And sometimes we end up with something like this. Now, these reports, I'm not saying that the values are wrong. These may be all right. But if you have something like this, it will be very overwhelming for your users. It's going to be very difficult to focus and to get the main insight. So if you look at this page, think, what is the main insight of this page? What is the main takeaway, right? It's very difficult to focus. And these reports will likely to fail. People will not want to use. They will start asking for Excel exports, very likely, or it was just going to stay there and nobody using. And this is something that happens when design takes the backseat of the report development. So it should be as important as everything that I mentioned before. So now let's look into designing with purpose, so we don't end up with a failed report. So when we talk about designing with purpose, we are not talking only about aesthetics. So purposeful design ensures that users not only see the data, but they truly understand. And there is a difference between see and actually understand. And when the users understand, they will make confident decisions. And this starts with a focus on user-centric principles. So we want to enhance clarity, usability, and impact. And that means thinking very carefully about how we present information. And user interface design elements like white space, alignment, hierarchy, and consistency are fundamental to user-centric report design because they guide the eyes of our users, they help to reduce cognitive load, and they make the insight more accessible. And by improving clarity, usability, and accessibility, we empower our users to engage with data meaningfully and make better decisions faster. So now let's look into some of these user interface elements that I mentioned. Let's get started with white space. So if you ever felt overwhelmed looking at cluttered screen, like if you remember the first example that I showed, well, white space, or as some call negative space, is the remedy. So it refers to empty areas between the elements and prevents the reports to feel overwhelming. It's what gives breathing room. So here it's in the wrong order, of course, sorry. There we go. So this is the square, on the left. This is how it would be without any space. And then if you look to the image on the right, you can see where the arrows are. There is like a white space. I put it white like in purpose. And you can see that it gives a little bit breathing room, and also I add a little bit of order. So it is reducing visual noise and giving the users the chance to focus on what actually matters. So you're gonna have to avoid overcrowding your page. So it's not because you can add 20 different visuals on the page that you should. So you have to learn how to prioritize, group elements, and make sure that you can, if you need to, you create more than one page. Next, we have alignment. So in user interface design, it refers to the arrangement of elements in a way that creates visual connection. And I suspect that my animation is not right. There we go. There we go. So if you see here, the image on the left, you can see here that it's all over the place. And proper alignment, when we add the alignment, we put everything on the same line, for example, like you see on the image on the right, it will ensure a structured and logical layout. And that will guide users naturally through information, because the elements line up neatly. It creates a sense of order and professionalism. And if you want to achieve great alignment, you can use grid lines. We should maintain consistent spacing. So if you use a margin, I don't know, of 20 pixels, whatever you use, make sure that you also try to add similar distance between elements. And that will, and also you have to structure the visuals logically. So if I go here, so this, if you think, oh, I don't know how to use any external tool, this is something that I do in Power BI when I start a report. I use a shape, and you can see here this purple line. This is my shape, and I put around because I know that I need to leave space and that everything will be aligned. So I have outside, I have my space, and I will make sure that everything is aligned as well. So that's something very simple you can do whenever you're creating a report without having to use any external tool or anything fancy. And then what I do, I duplicate the page. So, and then at the end, I remove my shape. So that's something that you can do. Right, now we have the concept of information hierarchy. So reports often convey a lot of information, but not all the data holds equal weight. An information hierarchy is the logical structuring of the content based on importance, relevance, or sequence. So the purpose is to organize content meaningfully so that users can understand relationships and navigate information efficiently. So if you have here our chaotic, luckily my animation is in the right order now. I have this chaotic design. Let's move to one that is already aligned, that has got the spacing. How can we build our information hierarchy? That's something that I like doing. I think it's very, very easy to get started, is using levels of importance. So our first level of importance should have our report title, our main KPIs, the main outcome of that specific page. Our second level of importance, we're going to add some visuals that may explain a little bit more in detail our KPIs. And the third level of importance is where you add more detailed visualizations. So that could be a trend, it could be historical data, it could be a table with some more breakdown, so more granular data. And then let's see what I'm talking about. What does it mean? So I have here an example of a report that I created, and see how I structure this example. I have here my first level of importance, that I have my title, I have my main KPIs, and I also can see here the page navigation. So I have the navigation on this side. And then my second level of importance, I added 2 charts that are adding a bit more of context to my KPI. So they're adding a little bit more detail, but it's not a lot of detail. It's just a little bit to explain what's happening. And then my bottom visual, it is my third level of importance, and I added like a timeline, everything that has been done from the beginning of the project all the way to today, and adding my my forecast line. So I have added more granular information on the bottom. So this is something that I usually like to work with, these 3 levels of importance. You can build it differently, but it helps you to organize information in a meaningful way when you consider levels of importance. Ideally, you should have 3 levels, but you can have more if you require. Just keep in mind that we shouldn't have too many charts on the same page. And then we have the concept of visual hierarchy. And this is the arrangement and styling of visual elements to guide the viewer's attention in a specific order. So we can leverage visual hierarchy to reinforce information hierarchy. So what do I mean by that? Let's have a look at some examples. So if our information hierarchy goal is to prioritize key insights, the visual hierarchy technique means use a larger font, bold colors, or top placement for those key insights because they will stand out. So for example, place headline KPIs in a large card at the top of your report. That's something that I did on the previous example as well. And then if the information hierarchy goal is to group related content, visual hierarchy technique would be use consistent colors, borders, or spacing to make sure that your user will understand what is grouped or not. So we have here example, cluster metrics under financials or operations with matching visuals. So just an example, you can organize your page. And next, it's something that is very important, which is consistency, and that is for layout and beyond. So where visual elements, interactions, and data representation should follow a predictable and uniform pattern across all the views, all your pages. And if you have more reports, for example, you have an app with multiple reports, if that is consistent, it will help your users to quickly understand and trust the data. So they will navigate more efficiently through the reports. They're going to spend less time trying to figure out what's happening to actually using the reports and how they should. So here's an example of inconsistent layout. So you can see here that the title has got a different style. The position of my KPIs, so one is this lister here is on the top and the other one is left-hand navigation. KPI cards are also in different locations. So in terms of layout, we have to structure navigation, slicer placement, title alignment, and chart order. We should try to make these consistent. And then we also have consistency in visual elements. So that is for data and user interface colors, typography, iconography, spacing. So if you have a look here on this example, my colors for forecast and actual, they are like navy and purple. And on the second page, I use light blue and orange. That will create a cognitive dissonance. It's going to be harder for your users to understand what's happening. And that is also, if you see here in terms of iconography, types of icons. So they are different across it. They should be the same. And also, if you're using full, like if you see here, these houses, it's got fill inside, and this one is just the outline. You should also make sure that it's the same style. And spacing as well. So as I mentioned, you can see how things are not equally aligned. So it doesn't only it doesn't not only help user to better navigate a report, it also gives a more professional look. So these are bad examples. Don't do these. And consistent should also be in terminology. So use the same labels, the same naming convention. So I'm a queen of doing this. Instead of saying month end, so let's say I start my page with month end, and very easily I flip to end of month, right? We should be consistent. And very often the organization that you work for or for your client, they may have a naming convention that you should try to match, because it will make things easier, more familiar for people who are using the report. So naming convention is very, very important. So don't do this. And we also have consistency in terms of data format. So for example, I have here my date in this format. So this is day, month, and year with 2 digits. And then I have the data in a different format. Also, if you have a currency, for example, my currency is formatted in pounds, and here is not formatted at all. So whatever you pick for your report, you have to stick to it. That's very common, especially with currencies. You add decimals and then you don't add decimals. You're going to round up. What are you going to do? Does your client or does your organization already have a way that you should follow? You have to understand that as well. So these are bad examples. Now, talking about really bad things, what does right look like? Well, I'm not going to say this is perfect, but we're looking for something like this, right? I have here predictable behavior. My titles are placed on the same location, my KPI cards, my navigation is consistent, the use of colors is consistent. So I use here for actual and spanned and forecast, everything is consistent across the page. So these will help your user to navigate more efficiently, and it will reduce cognitive load in terms of how am I going to use the report? Because we are developers, we may well know how things work, but we're not designing for ourselves, we're designing for other people. And very often those people, they're not familiar with Power BI. Now, there is something else that is very important in terms of design. It's not only for Power BI reports, it can be for anything, from a blog, if you create your own website, which is human perception. It's very useful when we understand how we perceive information, and we try to leverage our design so that things feel very, very intuitive. It's not like you're going to be looking for, because we're going to use some of these patterns. So let's get started with eye scanning. So naturally, the natural way that we visually move across a page, and that can be a book, it can be, I don't know, you're reading an article online, we don't read everything, right? So we scan, and we scan in two well-known patterns, which are the F patterns and the Z pattern. The F pattern, the reason that these patterns occur is because mainly in Western, at least in the Western countries, we start reading from the left to the right and from the top to the bottom. The F pattern is very useful for when you have a lot of text. And the Z pattern is very, very good when we have information hierarchy. And by placing the most critical elements along the path, and for example, your KPIs, your titles, you're going to ensure that your audience will see that first, because they will naturally scan the page and those elements will be on their way. What do I mean? Let's have a look here on the same example that I showed. I use Z scanning pattern. I have started with my titles and my KPI cards, and my least, not least important, but the one that not everybody may look, which is the more granular data. And I even have here an information button here that also follows on my Z scanning pattern here. That could also be here on the top right. That would also work. Now, I didn't put my slices across the path because we're going to look into it a bit later. I chose to go through to use left-hand side navigation because I have too many slices, too many pages to add, and I didn't want to clutter my my top here on this area of the visual. So I'm going to look later why these also work. So on this page, I have my entry, right? I'm entering the page here, going from the top left to the right, and my exit is here, right? So something that would also work if you have an arrow saying next page, it would also go well here. Something that I've seen in the past and I don't recommend is putting your slices here on the bottom of the page, because even though they are on the scanning path, if they are on the path, we expect to interact with these slices before, not after we scan the page. So never put your slices on the bottom of the page. Next, let's talk about Gestalt principles. So Gestalt psychology is from the 1920s, and it's based on the idea that people perceive visual elements as unified wholes rather than as individual parts. And these principles tap into the way that our brains naturally organize visual information. That's why if we tap into these principles, our report design will be more intuitive and user-friendly. So by applying this principle, we help guide our users' attention and make complex data easier to digest. I don't have time to speak about all the Gestalt principles. We're going to have a look at some of them. I'm going to say what the principle is. I'm going to show you some examples as well. So let's start with a figure ground or foreground versus background. And these explains how we naturally separate visual elements into main focus, which is the figure or the foreground, and background. And that helps to quickly identify what is important. And when we create a strong contrast between key elements and the background, we will guide our users to look at that specific place first. So we're going to play with colors to create contrast, and that will improve clarity and reduce cognitive load because they will know straight away where to find the most important information. That ensures that the high priority elements are seen first. So I have here this example in the report, and you can see here, first I have my key metrics on the top. And they are standing clearly against the background. So you can see here I use a dark color on a white background, and that makes those cards stand out immediately. Second, I have these line charts here. First, I want you to look into how we have solid and dashed line. So the actual values is in a solid line, which naturally draws more attention than the dashed line. And this happens because our brains tend to prioritize bold and continuous shapes over fragmented ones. And this was done intentionally because when I created this page, I wanted to focus the attention on what actually happened, not the baseline. So the baseline is like a forecast. And the other thing that I play with the colors here. So the actual start, which is this blue, has more contrast against the background. It stands out more than a grayish color that blends in with the background. It's like a boring neutral color. So that's something you can do as well. Now let's talk about grouping by similarity. That means elements that share visual attributes, and that could be shape, color, alignment. We see them as belonging together. Therefore, our users will quickly recognize patterns and relationships. So what are you talking about? Something that we mentioned about in terms of grouping by color. Using the same color consistently, you can when you do that to your group, you're seeing everything what is actual, what is not actual. And there is also, I'm going to show another example, which is I had two donut charts side by side, and because they have similar shapes, you will see how you will, without even thinking, you're going to think that they are related. So we're going to see a bit forward. Let me just move across to the next one, which is grouping by proximity. So we naturally perceive elements that are placed close together as part of the same group, and that happens even if they look different. And this helps our users to understand which visuals or data points are related if we place them close together, and also makes the layout more intuitive and reduce the need for extra labels or explanation. So here's a good example. I have here, this is my oceanographer greeting you. I have precipitation versus the El Nino index. So El Nino Southern Oscillation Index. And you can see here that I have maximum precipitation and I have other values under it. And I have max temperature and minimal temperature. And I do not use any box around it. I just add space between. And because whatever is grouped together, so you will see as belonging to the same group. So I don't have to add a box around it. I just added what is related together, and then I made use of white space to separate those, and that is a very powerful way of doing that. So just bear in mind that it's not about using each element that I'm talking about separately. You're going to see that often we use everything together to make sure that we design a better report. And that brings to the next example here. So again, I have the difference is that this time it is inside a box, which of course you will naturally perceive as belonging together. But the way that I put the average ratio for female and male, you will instantly think that those measures are related. And also, if you look here, my donut charts, I place them together intentionally because they are related. But then think about, they also have the same shape. So we'll naturally perceive them as being related. So that was my idea to tell you, look, I'm grouping and I'm by proximity and also by, what they look like. And then we have here after, let me see if I have another. Yes. And then after my donut chart, I have another bar chart that has got the same color. So the same color for female, the same color for male. And because the way it follows those two donut charts, you will also understand that perhaps that chart is related. And it is, because one is the overall ratios and the other one is on the timeline. So this is using various elements that I mentioned together to bring a better user experience. And then we have grouping by enclosure. So we perceive elements as related when they are visually enclosed within a boundary, like a box, a shaded area, a border, even if they're not close together. And this is the most powerful of the Gestalt principles. It will take over any other of the principles. So if there is a box, regardless of color, proximity, or whatever, you will see them as belonging together. And that, of course, will help your users to quickly identify related content when we place them within a shared container. That's the example that I showed previously as well. I have my cards, and everything inside these cards you will naturally understand that is a primary GPI. And the same for the secondary and tertiary. I didn't have to add here the average ratio female. I didn't have to say if it was primary, secondary, tertiary, because I used the container around it to let you know that everything in that container belongs to those specific metrics. And then we have grouping by connection. So we perceive elements as related when they are visually connected by lines, arrows, or other linking elements, even if they're not close together or if they look different. And a very good example is a line chart. So the line connecting data points visually group each series into a continuous trend, and we naturally follow the flow of data, and we understand without thinking that there is a trend or a progression over time. Another example is this decomposition tree, where we have connected lines. So the chart visually connects, in this case, revenue to figures from carrier to its products and then further to the locations. And these connections imply relationships. So you follow the line, you know the revenue means, okay, it's carrier B, and then for hair care, Mumbai. So you follow that. You understand that there is a relationship and a hierarchy. So it is easier to interpret the data as grouped and related. Now let's talk about interactivity and accessibility. So instead of just presenting a one-size-fits-all view, interactivity allows our users to uncover insights that are most relevant to them. And of course, accessibility is a critical factor ensuring that insights are available to everyone, regardless of abilities, disabilities, and circumstances. Let's get started with interactivity. So interactivity increases dashboard engagement by allowing our users to export data dynamically, and that makes the experience more personalized. So how can we incorporate interactivity? First of all, filters and slices. That means that your user can select what they want to see, what's relevant for them. So for me, for example, I report in a program that has got multiple projects and they have multiple project managers. And sometimes they just want to see how their projects are doing. They don't want to know about the other projects. And when I do that, I'm tailoring my report to everybody who needs to filter by project. Another way is by adding tooltips that helps add instant context by hovering over. You don't add clutter. It is you don't have to worry about that. There are some accessibility considerations I'm going to speak a little bit later, but tooltip is really good as well because you're adding context, you're adding a little bit more information, and by just hovering over. And then we have drill-throughs, and that means go deeper, right? Allows people to get depth into the data. It's very good for storytelling, and also in a way that you don't have to add all those detailed visuals on the same page. We have to be very careful because although drill-through are really good, the way that we build the drill-throughs can be quite not the best way possible, because we know how to filter drill through. Our users may not know that how to do it. So we could perhaps add some annotations, or we can create a button to help them to go through the drill through in a more user-friendly way. So people don't need to understand what, because they may not even know what a drill through is. And then we have to, whatever we do, we have to ensure that you have intuitive navigation, that you're going to look at that. There is a way to identify that those elements are for interaction. And that means by making sure you have affordance, if you have buttons or whatever, you have to make sure that those look like you will engage with. So there are, depending if you have slices, there are ways sometimes to format on hover, selected. So you can do that, because once they hover over, they will see that something is happening, for example, and they will see, okay, if it's, it's clickable. So we have to make sure that whatever we add, it's telling our users interact with us. And that will help your users to quickly find and act on the insights that drive success. But we have to be very careful with audience type. Some audience, they don't want to click anywhere. So I had a client once, he told me, I want to find my insights with 2 clicks. 2 clicks was my KPI, and I couldn't do anything. He didn't want interaction. He just, higher level it gets, less interaction they want. So make sure you understand your audience before you start adding loads of interactivity. And then we have accessibility. So it is, as I said, a critical factor ensuring that everybody has access to information. And there are a few things that we have to consider in terms of accessibility. So first of all is supporting screen readers. So Power BI is compatible with screen readers by default, but we have to make sure as developers that all the visual elements, they have alternative text and they are correctly labeled. So for your titles, your axes, because the screen readers will be able to read that information and your user will not miss. They will fully comprehend the report's content. And then we have use high contrast themes. So improving readability is very, very important, especially for users that may have low vision. So when we have a strong contrast ratio, it will, between the foreground and the background, foreground could be text, it could be your data visualizations, we will enhance clarity. And if you're not sure what is a good contrast or a bad contrast, we can follow the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines guidance, which for regular text, we should have a contrast ratio of at least 4.5 to 1. And that is text up to 17 points. And if your text is above 18, or if in bold above 14, the contrast ratio should be of 3 to 1. And the colors that you choose to build your visuals also should have a contrast against the background of 3 to 1. And then, of course, we have avoid color only indicators. So there are some visual impairments like color blindness, mean that the users may struggle to see colors the way we do. If the only distinction is through colors, they may miss the story. So we should try to add labels, icons, or alternative formats to improve accessibility. We also have here keyboard navigation, which Power BI is compatible by default. We don't have to do anything about that. And we have to understand that not all users rely on a mouse. And that's why we have to ensure interactive elements as filters, our slices, they are accessible by a keyboard. So that's especially important if you're using custom visuals. And we also have to manually adjust tab order, which is the order that we navigate the elements on the page by using the tab key. And that should match the order that users is intended to consume the report. We should also simplify tooltips. They are not very good with screen readers, so we could add buttons with alternative text as well, so that the information is not missed by anyone. Everyone has access to information to the hover over, and also you're going to have your alternative text. And also typography is very important, so stick to simple readable fonts that are easy to process and avoid those super decorative styles. In terms of font size, Power BI allows us to use font size 8, which we shouldn't. Try to stick to above 12 points. And keep in mind that as you increase the canvas size, you're going to have to increase the minimum font size as well, proportionally. And when we integrate accessibility practice into our report design, our reports will be usable and inclusive. So by increasing accessibility, you're going to improve user experience for everybody. Now, I mentioned about color contrast and tab order. I have a couple of videos on my channel that I walk through how to do both. So if you're not sure how to do it, I have these videos. They are short and sweet, easy to follow. Now, let's talk about some layout tip and wrap up. So when designing reports, layout plays a very important role. So we have to organize our elements strategically. So something that we could do, that's just a starting point, is reserve the key, reserve the top for key insights, left for navigation. So left-hand side navigation is a common design patterns. We are all used to websites. So your user is likely to have used a website more than they have used a Power BI report. So that's going to be very intuitive how to use the left-hand side navigation. And also allows you to add more elements. So if you use the top, things may get a bit crowded, but top right also works if you want just to have, for example, one slicer. But I think the left-hand side navigation is also future-proofs your report in case you have to add more pages and more filters. Although I wouldn't use more than 4 or 5 slices. Reserve the center for some visuals and the bottom for trends or detailed the information. Limit the visuals, maximum 5 to 7. If your users cannot find your insights under 5 seconds, you lost them. So wrapping up, reports are more than just data displays. And by designing with intention, we shape how users interact with information, creating clarity and focus. Leveraging how we naturally perceive visuals allow us to lead our audience effortlessly, connecting them with the insights they need. If you're not sure how to get started, you say, oh, Juliana, it's a lot to digest, fine. We can start with CRAP for effective design. And I'm sure you're going to remember these letters because they make a naughty word. So what are these? So we have here, C for contrast. By applying contrast, we ensure that the key elements stand out, and it also ensure accessibility. R for repetition, so it reinforces consistency, helping the user to navigate and understand the content more intuitively. We also have alignment, A for alignment, so it creates a logical flow, reducing cognitive load and improving readability. And P for proximity, group related items together, making relationships between elements clearer and enhancing comprehension. So show less, say more. You leave no room for noise, just meaningful, impactful insights. Let's move from design fails to design wins. Thank you very much. Any question now?
No, this was great. We actually did have a question in Q&A. So Amy, worked? I don't know if you wanted to. Yeah. Amy, did you want to get off mute and ask your question?
If not, we can just say it out loud.
Yeah.
I had asked about getting data sets to practice on for Power BI and any recommended trainings as well.
Were you able to hear that? Because it was kind of low.
Yeah, it was. I think you were a little far away from your microphone.
Oh, excuse me. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
It's still, it's a little better.
Okay, great. I was just asking about where we can get data sets and also if you have recommended Power BI trainings.
Right. So data sets, Kaggle, they have free data sets you can use. There are some data visualization challenge. So if you go on LinkedIn, there is Data DNA. I used to be an ambassador, so now it's going to be every 2 months. They give you a data set, you can build reports. I'm not sure about training. I'm sure there are enough. There are loads of free content in the community that you can access, but I haven't done a proper training for a long time, so I'm a bit outdated. But Microsoft Learn page is really good.
Could you repeat where you said the data sets are available?
Yes, Kaggle, Kaggle.
Oh, I see. Okay, thanks.
There's also a bunch. If you look up like data sets from the government, they have several websites. I think it's like data.gov or something like that. But there's a lot of great data sets you can download there of all different types.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments?
I really liked how you mentioned about audience type earlier, because, I constantly think of the concept of when you're talking about intuitive navigation, like a lot of people on this call, certainly not everybody, but a lot of people on this call, we read left to right, but that not all cultures are that way. So, you're talking about how that changes with your audience was like spot on. So I really appreciate it. I once was brought up when I was kind of brand new to the dashboard design. I brought up to my boss like, oh, well, color blindness and blah blah blah, and it's mostly for this type of demographic and and so we need to not worry about that as much. And she quickly informed me like, yeah, so everybody that's seeing this report is in that demographic. And I was like, oh.
Yeah, colorblind it's more common than we think. The reason I started learning about accessibility is because I had a stakeholder. He was colorblind. He didn't tell me. For 6 months, he kept messaging me. Oh, how are you doing? Because I created a stacked column chart, right? Yeah. Red, amber, and green. And after 6 months, I was fed up with this guy. Oh my God, why you give me such a hard time? Go back to school. And I had a call. I said, what is your problem? And he apologized because he was colorblind. Yeah, and I think, it was the worst day, like in terms of career wise, it was the worst. I felt so bad because I thought he was being a nonsense, and it was something that I didn't consider. And I knew that color blindness existed, right? But we easily forget when we are designing because everybody's using red, amber, and green. And that is one of the most inaccessible color combinations you can possibly use.
Great presentation. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
If anybody else has questions, feel free to, pop them in the Q&A or come off mic, whatever you're more comfortable with. We didn't see any more pop in, I don't think. Let me double check.